2025 is going to be the best year that you've ever had. And we're going to help make that happen. We got 2 summits heading your way. First of all, in January, the Sales and Business Development Recruiting Summit. Make sure to get registered, free for the live sessions, or go VIP for the replays. And then the Recruiting Growth Summit is coming back for March. These events are going to help you start strong, run strong, so that way you can finish strong. So let's go. Make sure to get registered. You'll see the link in the show notes. All right, enjoy the podcast. Coming up on this episode of the Elite Recruiter Podcast.
If I can take a new recruiter that wants to do coaching with me and they can get them to do a deal and they can see the light in what we do as an industry, that is more exciting to me than me doing a 50, 60K deal or whatever. Like I was like this big, like, look at me kind of guy, like running around loud on the phone, the whole thing. But I was miserable inside. I was lonely. I was overweight. I was depressed. I was doing a bunch of cocaine on the weekends. I was drinking. I was using. I was sleeping around. I was being a total, like, I was just not a good dude.
Welcome to the Elite Recruiter Podcast with your host, Benjamin Mena, where we focus on what it takes to win in the recruiting game. We cover it all from sales, marketing, mindset, money, leadership, and placements.
I'm excited about this episode of the Elite Recruiter Podcast because I have an absolute big biller here to share. He's going to share kind of the things that he did to have these huge numbers. And we're talking huge numbers. Best year was 2.4 million. Yeah. Is that true?
Yeah, $2.4 million. That was my piece of the pie that I built that year.
Okay, so I got a question for you on this. And this kind of goes into like, we'll walk through how you got there. But the 2.4 is just your side of the pie. Like technically speaking, you didn't handle the candidate side. So this is like the 2.4 split. So like, did you say you technically build 4.8 this year? Or do you just cover your side of the split?
It's all 50-50. So if I had an account, if I'm working with Nike and I play Steve up Nike for $200,000 at 25% and they pay me $50K, $25K of that goes to my numbers and $25K goes to the recruiter's numbers. So if you add up my $25K however many times in that scenario, you would get 2.4 million. If you take the whole $50K, which is the number we billed to Nike, which Nike paid to my company, then you take that, that's the 4.8 million. So we've technically brought in this company 4.8 million in fees from revenue that I generated, but 2.4 goes to me as far as what I'm paid out on.
I love that. I mean, we'll kind of talk about like how you got there, the strategies and all that stuff. But, you know, before we get started and do a deep dive on how you got into recruiting, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right, cool. So I'm Mike Anderson, 37 years old. Single, never married, no kids, fell into recruiting like anybody else. I sort of, after college, didn't major in recruiting. I did baseball and communications, which was just like, you know, a get me over, just a thing that I could do to get a degree. Get out of college. I started working out at the gym. They're like, hey, you know, you should work here. And I was like, all right, well, I'm here anyway. I might as well save $30 a month on the gym membership. So I started working 24-hour fitness. And, you know, they're like, you should be a trainer. So I was like, all right, I'll be a trainer. And then I was like, give me some people to train. And they're like, what do you mean give you some people to train? They're like, go get them. I'm like, what do you mean? You want me to just go tell people to train with me? So they're like, yeah. And I didn't know this at the time, but that's like crazy. But I did it. And I went on my first day and I ran up with like 5 people at nighttime that didn't look like they know what they were doing. I was like, hey, you should train with me. And I sold up like 3 of them on training memberships because they had seen me in the gym and they were like, whoa, this guy could sell. And I didn't even know that sales was a big part of being a trainer. So I moved up the ranks in training at the gym. And then they're like, hey, sell memberships. And I crushed that. And then I moved into like management and this whole thing. So I realized I was good at sales. And then that was going on for a couple of years. And then, you know, one day I'm sort of looking up, like, if I wanted to move up in the company that I was working at, I would have to like move to New York for the gym. And I didn't want to do that. And so I was sort of frustrated. And I remember thinking to myself, like, where can you make like money in sales that's uncapped commission? And so I just like Googled like uncapped commissions, you know, whatever. And I had remember like recruiting came up. And throughout a series of crazy events, I just applied to a job, not even know what recruiting was, because all I thought it was, you know, being a like college recruiting for high school sports or like military recruiting. I didn't even know that this was an industry. And, you know, I walked in 11 years ago. I took like a $60,000 pay cut to take this job for uncapped commissions because I knew that I wanted to do that. I was like 24 or 25 years old. And then I walked into Workbridge, learned the job, and it was game on from there. And I've never looked back since. And it's been the craziest, funnest, wildest, nutbaggiest ride. And if you're in recruiting, you know what I'm talking about. If you're not in recruiting, you're like, why would you ever do something like that? And it was the best, so worth it, whatever. So that's my story.
You literally went to Google, looked at uncapped commissions, and it said recruiting as an option. You went and found a recruiting job literally based on that.
Dude, I'm telling you. Another thing that happened, I had a CFO of a recruiting firm he had come into my gym and he wanted a tour. This is another part of the story that I didn't go into before, but he had wanted a tour of my gym. And he comes in, he's like, hey man, I want a guest pass. And I hear that as a sales guy. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not selling you a guest pass. I'm selling you a membership. So I took him on this like 45-minute tour. And at the end of the tour, he ends up swiping his Amex Black for like $13,000 and like 4 gym memberships for his entire family and 1 year of personal training for everybody. And when he handed me the Amex Black, he was like, I told you I wasn't going to buy it. I wasn't here to buy or get a membership. And I was like, natural born sales guy. And he ends up being the CFO at a recruiting company. And he gave me his card. And he's like, if you ever think about recruiting, you should check this out. And I sort of just tossed it, didn't think anything of it. And then later on, when I looked up uncapped commissions, I remembered that he had said that. And so that's kind of where it all came from.
Have you ever gone back and reached back to that guy?
Oh, dude. Yeah. His name's Peter. I talked to Peter probably 4 or 5 times since my career sort of took off. He's a good dude. He's the one that told me, he's like, whatever it is that makes people good at this, you got it. And so I was like, all right, let's go. It's weird how when you're doing this a long time, there's people that have impacted you and the way that you end up into it. I mean, there ain't nobody I've ever met that's like, I majored in recruiting. I wanted to be a recruiter. Before my first word was client. My second word was candidate. Like, no. You know what I mean?
Okay, so you were there for a little bit of time and then you jumped over to Cybercoders. Like, talk about that.
Yeah. So I was over there at Workbridge 4.5, 5 months. I don't know. I did a handful of deals and it was cool. I sort of just wanted to get out of there, after being there 4.5, 5 months to just go take on Cybercoders. Because at the time, Cybercoders I'd heard was like a feeding frenzy for like, hey, you could go just take your skills and however you recruit, there's no real rules. You kind of do what you need to do. And, you just have fun with it. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to go check it out. And I went over there and I met a guy that is one of the most impactful people in my career, a guy named Kyle O'Neill. That guy spent a lot of time with me. And I was a nightmare. I was a big builder with a big ego, but I was not an upstanding quality guy, the guy that I am today, the way that I do the job. I was not that guy then. He had to put up with a lot of my BS for a long time. At the time, I hated it because I thought he was just treating me like a bad student. But now I look back and I see how much he actually invested in me to try to help me and stuff like that. I reached back out to him since I got sober. That's a whole nother conversation. And I made my amends with him and talked to him and we become really close. And him and I have always remained friends since then. But yeah, that's my Cybercoder story. I was there for 3.5 years, did a bunch of billing, made a lot of money. And then I went off to Collabora from there.
I know you've mentioned in like a few other podcasts and like even some of your LinkedIn posts, like you've been pretty vulnerable about your personal story. Like you were absolutely crushing it, but behind the scenes,
oh, dude, I was a dead man walking, dude. I was a zombie. My life was riddled with big commission checks, but midweek loneliness. I was like this big, like, look at me kind of guy, like running around loud on the phone, the whole thing. But I was miserable inside. I was lonely. I was overweight. I was depressed. I was doing a bunch of cocaine on the weekends. I was drinking. I was using. I was sleeping around. I was being a total, like, I was just not a good dude. And all of that stuff, like, it felt like freedom. And I was sort of like, that Wolf of Wall Street mentality. And it was like, I believed at the time, like, it was fool's gold, but it was like the pinnacle of success for me. But the reality of it was I was going nowhere. I'm looking up and all of a sudden I'm 27, 28, 29 years old. And the people that I'm partying with are like still staying at 24, 25, 26. The people that are getting older are getting married, having kids, and like they're doing these things. And I'm sort of like stuck in that same wash, rinse, repeat cycle, that hamster wheel. And I didn't know that I was so depressed inside. I didn't know it at the time, but I was. And so, from 2014 to 28, I'd say even before that, 2013 to 2018, that was 5 years of just, I remember maybe half of it. And I'm not proud of any of it, but like it's part of what happened. And then May 25th of 2018, Friday night, I get pulled over, red and blue lights, third time in 10 years. I got a DUI in 2011, another DUI in 2012, my third DUI in 2018. And I remember when I saw those red and blue lights, I remember thinking to myself, like, this is it, you're done. My attorney on my second DUI had said, hey, don't get a third DUI in 10 years. That's like a death sentence in the state of California. When the cop was walking up to pull me over, I had been up for like 36 hours straight. I was high on drugs. I had drugs in my pocket. I was drunk. I was toasted. And the cop was walking up to my car. And I remember I just had this feeling like, whatever happens, just tell the truth. Just tell the truth. Like, I don't know what that means, but just tell the truth. So the dude walks up to my car and the cop comes up and like, he doesn't even knock. He kind of leaves a knock and I roll my window down and he looks at me. He goes, yeah, it's 8 o'clock on the Friday night. It wasn't even late. It was 8 o'clock. And I was driving to a buddy's house. He's like, why I pulled you over? And I just remember looked up and I was like, had my hands on the wheel. I was like, no, but I've had about 35 drinks and I have 2 8 balls of cocaine in my pocket. So you should probably just arrest me. And he goes, you just ran a stop sign. And I was like, oh. So I basically confessed everything. And he's like, I'm out of the car, whatever. So I go to jail, this whole thing. I think I'm going to lose my job. Craziest thing ever of all time. Because I told the truth to him, the next day I actually wake up in the jail cell. He comes into my jail. He's like, there's only been 3 times in my career. He's like, I've been doing this for 25 years. I remember this vividly in the jail cell. May 26, 2018. That's my sobriety date. I've been sober since then. But he comes to the jail cell and he says, there's only been 3 times in my career where I pulled somebody over and they've just been like, hey, there's a body in the trunk or whatever. They just kind of, they just start spewing. And he's like, there's something different about you. He's like, you need help. For sure you need help. At the time I'm 30 years old. He's like, you're 30 years old. I got kids your age. I'm not going to put in the police report that you had 2 8 balls of cocaine. I'm going to put that you were on drugs, but I'm not going to put that you had there, because if I put that in there, you're going straight to jail today. And I'm going to release you before your court date on your own recognizance. We're giving you a gift here. Get the help you need before your court date. Otherwise it's going to be a really bad day. And he's like, you need some help. So he gave me this out. At the time I was like, I didn't really think anything of it. And I go get my phone and I had 7% battery left on my phone when they gave me my phone back from the day before. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I better have, I'm going to have a bunch of missed calls, texts, emails, everything. I didn't have anything. And I remember it was very dry. My phone was dry. There was nothing on it. And I had enough just to order an Uber to get to my car. And I remember thinking I was the lowest of low at that point. And I just remember I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. 5 days later, I walked into my first AA meeting and I've been sober since. I haven't picked up drugs or whatever. I went through a court program for a year. And anyway, kept my job, told my boss the truth, everything. And now I speak about my story openly, because if there's people like there that are running their job the way that I used to run it, like, you don't know how broken you are until you get broken and you realized how broken you were. You know what I'm saying? And so that was where I was at. I didn't even know. I thought I was living the high life. I was literally high, but I thought I was living the high life. And anyway, I sort of went off on a tangent right there, but hopefully that was kind of what you were looking for.
That next morning, what was the biggest thing, the biggest wake-up call? Was it just not a single person realized you were gone? Or is it just I actually need a freaking change?
So I've always said if I'm going to write a book about my life, it's going to be called 7%, The Life and Times of Mike Anderson. Because the 7% is a number that I remember seeing on my phone. And that's just where everything was there was, taken up. And that's sort of a metaphor for where I was at. I mean, I was at the end of my rope. And what's wild is the next weekend, the guy I always bought drugs from, he sold, I think so, this is not verified, but I think he sold someone to somebody else and ended up passing away from fentanyl. And so oftentimes I wonder if that could have been me. I don't know. So pretty wild there. But anyway, so 7%, I remember waking up, sitting on that curb, and I remember thinking to myself, dude, what does it come to? Where did my life go? At the time I'm making, I don't know, $500,000, $600,000 a year, $500,000. I'm killing it. Everything's good. I can't stop gambling. I can't stop drinking. I can't stop using. I was at the bottom. It was the most facade, it's just whatever. And I remember thinking to myself, the big worry in my head was, what are people going to say when they know that I'm no longer partying? Come to find out, that was the least of my worries. Didn't even think about that, because people were just like, yeah, dude, we knew you had a problem the whole time. I'm like, why didn't anybody tell me? They're like, we tried to. You didn't listen. But anyway, that's sort of where it happened. And I honestly, truth be told, I only went to Alcoholics Anonymous because I wanted to win favor with the judge. I didn't actually go because I thought I was an alcoholic. But I walked in and I started listening. And there's a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old, a 50-year-old, a 70-year-old, a janitor, a CEO, a football player, a basketball player, a golfer, a caddy, a Uber driver. I mean, every walks of life. And they're all just saying their stories and they're talking, and they finish everything with, my name's Steve, I'm an alcoholic. My name's Wendy, I'm an alcoholic. My name's Billy, I'm an alcoholic. And I'm like, son of a monkey, I must be an alcoholic. It all made sense to me. So I'm like, good, if the shoe fits. So in that moment, I realized I was an alcoholic. And my dad was an alcoholic. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm never going to be like him, because he had died in 2009. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm never going to be like him. And sure enough, here I am at the time, 9 years later, and I'm exactly my dad.
It's easy to say that you're going to stop. It's easy to say that you're going to change, but you actually did. I don't know how many days you're at now, based on some of the stuff that I've seen, but you stopped. Did you ever have this drawback, or you were just, I'm moving forward?
Dude, oh man. There's 3 times in my first year. I remember them all. I'll tell you about one of the times. But I was 56 days, maybe 8 weeks sober. I had been to court. They had told me I'm not going to go to jail. They gave me a gift. They said you can enter a program that keeps you out of jail. You keep your job. That was a gift from God, for sure. And I was able to be in this program. But I'm 3.5 weeks in to this program, and there was a day. It was a Friday night. I remember vividly in my office, and my company, they had done this contest. And anyways, they got some buses to go to an Angel game. It was a half an hour drive, whatever. But all of this stuff had happened. There was we worked with there was obviously attractive girls. There was people were partying. It was all the stuff. It was all the stuff that I would normally be a part of. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I can't go to that, which I would normally go to that. At the time, people knew that I wasn't drinking. They knew, but it was only like 7 or 8 weeks. It was kind of new. They didn't all know why. A few people knew why that I was close to, that I told them the story, but not everybody. But I remember there was that day, and I remember when they'd all brought in a bunch of booze in the office. They were all getting ready to go party and have a good time and whatever, And that situation was a Mike Anderson one-on-one situation. That was, pockets full of coke, partying, having a good time. Let's see what happens. Going to be the man, all the stuff. And that day, I wanted to drink. I remember going to AA that morning, telling my meeting about that, saying, "Hey guys, this is gonna happen tonight," and I could already feel myself being pulled. And they're like, "Stand strong," and they're like, all the stuff they teach you to do, which is call your sponsor, find a meeting, have an exit plan, all the stuff that like you set yourself up to, so that you don't have to put yourself in a situation where you can't say no. So I did everything they said, and I remember having like a visceral pull. So I called my sponsor at the time. It was like 4:30 p.m. on a Friday. I'm like, dude, I really want to drink. Like, I'm about to say F it and just go do it. Like, I just want to go. And he's like, don't you dare. He's like, you're going to regret it. He's like, get your you-know-what into your car and get to an AA meeting. I literally Irish goodbye, walked out of the office at like 4 o'clock on a Friday. Everybody else was drinking. I didn't say bye. I just left. I got in my car. I drove like 100 miles an hour in the carpool lane by myself to get to a meeting, to get to an AA meeting. True story. It's like the meeting starts off at like 5 o'clock or something. I get there. It's like 4:52. I'm like there. I'm just like sitting at my table, just like ready to go. Just like they could just see I'm huffing and puffing. The meeting starts and they're like, all right, does anybody want to share? And they're like, all right, clearly Mike does. So I'm like, this is BS. I hate this thing. I hate alcoholism. You guys are alcoholics. I'm not. This sucks. This is a life sentence. This is brutal. This is terrible. I hate it. Like, I should be out there partying. They're partying because we hit our goals that I helped them hit our goals. Like, I should be there. You guys suck. This is a stupid disease. I hate alcoholism. I'm just going on and on, right? And I get done, and then and I'm just spewing. But at the end, I get done after just yelling for like 5 minutes, and everybody's just like, you're right where you're supposed to be. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is brutal. Apparently, me doing that was exactly what I was supposed to do. And I remember I look back on that time, that specific event, and I always think to myself, if I would have given in on that event, I always wonder if I would have stayed sober to now. I don't know. I'd rather not ever have to know. But I've been sober since. But yeah, it was hard. I had a commitment. I looked at it real simple. For me, to drink was to die. That was it. That's the way I looked at it.
And how is that change that you made impacted your recruiting career?
Oh, dude. Oh. Well, first of all, I'm alive, so there's that. I wouldn't have a positive. Wasn't. So that's one. But there's that. But the other thing is, there's some basic principles that it's weird. You know these as a person, like, you grow up, tell the truth, be nice, share, whatever, da-da-da-da. And for whatever reason, I did everything not like that. I was a manipulator. I was a liar. I was a thief. I was a cheat. I was all the stuff. I was just a disgusting, there was nothing good about me at all. And I get into Alcoholics Anonymous, and they start like, hey, dude, why don't you just tell the truth? Like, what's the worst that can happen? Why don't you just start? And they gave me some basic stuff, and you're like, tell the truth. Like, why would I ever do that? Like, who's that going to, and you just like these basic things, and they actually made sense. And for whatever reason, my mom, who taught me them when I was 3, they never landed. And then now I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous, and some 72-year-old named Jack, who hasn't had a drink in 41 years and who's just sitting there with his cane, who's talking about how beer used to cost a nickel, is telling me to tell the truth. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense. And so it's because when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. I wasn't ready to hear it at that age, but now I was ready to hear it. So, and what they told me was, they're like, hey, you can tell the truth in here and you cannot drink in here. If you tell the truth out there, you won't drink ever again. And like, they told me that. And I was like, you mean tell the truth about me drinking? They're like, no, tell the truth in all your affairs. Like, in everything you do, tell the truth. So I was like, now I'm going to go back to my business that I only know about, omitting information and being a slippery guy and closing a deal and making it work and doing all the stuff that a lot of people know that I'm talking about, and just start telling the truth. He told me to tell the truth. And they're like, yeah, we do. And I remember I was like, okay. After that, when I heard that, the next call I had with a client, I was like, so I'm a recovering alcoholic, and everything I'm going to tell you is going to be the truth. And they're like, okay. Thanks. Like, congrats on your sobriety, whatever. And so I told them everything. I was like, this is why it costs 25%. This is why I want money. This is why you should hire from me. And I said everything just factually true, like no BS. And they were just like, okay, no problem. And then I started telling candidates, I'm like, hey, I don't think you should take this job. It doesn't make sense. You said you want this is what you're looking for. And then if you take this job, even though it's for me and I make money on it, I don't think it makes sense. And they've just been like, it's like counterintuitive to what I'm trying to do. But what I found is that telling the truth is like, it come back to me tenfold. And my ability just took off. And I didn't have to do nearly as much business development because I didn't have clients running away from me once they found out that I omitted truth or lied or whatever. And they kept coming back to me because they're like, dude, if nothing else, we're going to get the flat out facts from Mike. So I started doing that and my career just took off. And like, that was, I mean, this client right here, Chime, right? I did like 1.8, 1.9 with them. And over the course of, I don't know, a year and a half or so. And that relationship started out with me telling the flat out truth. And they were just like, I was just another recruiter to them. And then I just sort of took off and built a relationship with the VP of engineering, the head of talent there. Like, it just sort of took off. And like, that's an example of one example. I've got many of those examples, but like, that's what I'm talking about. So, you know, it wasn't like I didn't find people that I wasn't a better sourcer than people. I wasn't better. Like, I just knew that in every call, whoever I was talking to was going to get the truth. And they were going to get the fact that I wanted to make money. And then if I couldn't make money, I was going to at least tell the truth and build a relationship with them for when I could make money from them. And I was upfront with that. And I think people appreciated it. So I'd say that that's the biggest impact it made in my career. And it also made it really nice not to have to look over your shoulder, you know? Like, you're crossing your fingers that a placement makes it to 91 days because you told them something about a company that's really not true. Or you tell them that, like, you know, hey, they're going to get a bonus when you know they're not going to get a bonus. And you placed them in May, so the bonus wouldn't come until December anyway, so you're fine, right? Or you move your start dates to hit certain metrics to get your bonuses, or just all the stuff that just is the manipulation stuff that's easy to do that you don't think twice. I mean, you do think twice about it, but you do it anyway. I stopped doing that stuff. And then ironically, I made more money than I ever have. So like, if you look at my career as in the first 5 years of being drunk and high and all the stuff that I was doing, made a lot of money, spent a lot of money, gambled a lot of money, snorted a lot of money, pissed away a lot of money. Look at the last 5-6 years, made more money than I ever had, kept more money than I ever had because I wasn't doing a lot of stuff. And my relationships were as strong as they've ever been. So like, I mean, it's a tale of the same guy in two careers, right? So.
Well, before we start talking into like some of these like strategies when it comes to sales and business development, you also went out on your own. Like, what spurred that?
Well, so going out on my own was, I mean, it was something that I had thought about for a long time, and relationships are, you know, a big part of it. And I knew from a corporate standpoint, I wasn't, you know, I'm pretty out there with some of the things that I talk about and that I say. And in the corporate world, it's not always the most welcomed, I guess you could say sometimes. And so I sort of knew, like, the writing was on the wall, and it was like, when am I going to do it? When am I going to do it? And so finally one day, just, you know, decided to. So, you know, September of 2023, I launched, and here we are. And now we're, what are we, a year and 16 months into it. It's been great. And that I just knew that I wanted to be, like, I always talked about, like, I could build, I can crush, I can do whatever. And I always give analogies like, what if I dropped you in the middle of a phone or middle of a desert and gave you a phone and the internet? Could you make money? And like, I always knew that I preached that people could do that. And I was like, can I do that? I was like, I know I could do that. So I went and did it. And man, it's been awesome. The freedom is great. I mean, I always say that when you own your own company, every day is President's Club.
I absolutely love that. Let's talk about like some of the things that you've done. Like, you know, a $2.4 million a year, because you're so good at relationships, you've had, what is it, at least 3 or 4 clients that you've built over $1 million with. Like, every time I see somebody talk about, like, you know, they've had a client where they build like $1 million from, I'm like, is that a fluke? But the thing is, if it's more than 1, more than 2, it's no longer a fluke. It's about what you're actually doing. So how do you actually get there? Like, business development wise, how do you even find these clients?
It's not even about finding. It's not like a client wakes up and says, I'm going to be $1 million client to Mike Anderson. They don't wake up.
Oh yeah.
It's called client development because you develop the client. Like, that's what you do. And relationship development is development. Business development is development. There's a development piece. Day 1 is not the same as the client is on day 31, is day 61, day 91, whatever. And so you build a level of trust. You figure out who they are. I mean, it's like anything else. And so the ones that you can build strong relationships with, like, I'll say this. So I have at least 3, maybe 4. That's like right on the cusp of being $1 million. This other client I'm thinking about. So, but anyways, let's say it's 3 for sure. All 3 of the ones that I'm thinking about, the 3 clients I have, Chime being one of them, they didn't start off like a great foot of like, I mean, it took like a while to like build that relationships and like crack that door, figure out the code, how to figure out to like get in the door, build up, you know, all of the stuff. Like, I had been told to, you know, kick rocks, F off a bunch of times. Like, it was not like, it's never smooth sailing just right to the top because I just found some, like, whatever. There's always relational issues. I get told I'm aggressive a lot, which is true, but like, I get told a lot of stuff and I have to be able to deal with that. And also it takes, you know, at the time, it takes a really good team behind you to be able to source for you and fill your funnel and like make sure. And so like, yeah, I'm client facing, but like, if I'm not filling the funnel, I got nobody to invoice them for. And so I had a really good team. What I got really good at was making sure that my team heard directly from hiring managers exactly what they're looking for by putting them on calls, letting my team ask questions. Like, it was not this big game of telephone because I wanted them to hear it. Like, I knew at the height of my billing when it was just insane. And it was like, I mean, there was one time I had 32 different companies hiring for me and I had 77 candidates in process. Like, it was, I remember being like, I couldn't even breathe. There was like 13 interviews happening on a day. I don't even know who's where, what. It was crazy. But like, I remember in those days and the way that I built those $1 million businesses, those $1 million clients, the client was important for sure. No question about it. I'm not saying they weren't. But something that I sort of figured out quickly was my clients are actually the people that are recruiting for me. I need them because they're the ones that are bringing me the talent that keep the client happy. I can keep that relationship. I can keep talking. I can, whatever. Like a good detective, just keep the suspect talking. I can keep them doing that. I can do all that. I can, wave my hands, dance on a tree, whatever I got to do to keep them just looking at me. But at the time, I need the business to be happening behind me. So like I was always doing stuff to keep these guys and these girls that were working on my stuff like engaged and doing that. So I looked at sort of my clients were actually the recruiters that were recruiting for me, and the clients were just the ones that were paying us for doing that. If that means that. So
it makes perfect sense. And I love that you're also highlighting like the team, what the team does.
Yeah, I've had a really good career, a really great career, but I don't ever think for a second that I'm here where I'm at if it wasn't for a lot of people teaching me a lot of stuff and a lot of really, really good recruiters that wanted to work on my stuff, wanted to spend time. And, they liked how I account managed for sure. They knew that I would push their stuff to the top. They knew I could make it happen. They knew I could get quality offers. They knew I could negotiate high fees. They knew I could do all that stuff. So like they wanted to work on my stuff, granted, but they still did a really good job. They didn't have to work on it, but they chose to, which I obviously certainly appreciate. I learned this a long, long time ago. Management, which is what I was doing, was not about me getting where I wanted to go. It was I would get to where I wanted to go if I helped everybody else get to where they want to go. All I knew was that everybody had goals. They had families. They had kids. They had, and I just was like, I got to put money in their pockets. I knew if I was doing that, I was going to eat too. Like I wasn't worried about that. And so like, that was a big, big thing for me. And I know it sounds like super Sunday school answer, but like that was, I figured that out pretty quickly. And like, it might sound obvious, but when it hit me, I was like, oh my gosh, I need these guys. Cause if they walk, the client's the next thing to walk. You know what I mean? Cause trust me, you don't want me sourcing. Like I'm not some guru on candidate. No, it's not my deal. I mean, I'm good at it. I can do it, but like put me in front of the client all day long. Just, no. Not good at it. I'm not a sourcer. I've never been good at it.
Okay. Well, let's jump into the client development or client sales. I know you just dropped a course. So if people want like a full on breakdown of that, they can hop in the show notes or reach out to you directly for the link for that. But, when it comes to actually getting clients, like what's the secret to it?
I would say, I mean, there's some basics. There's some ABC 1, 2, 3 stuff. And I've talked about it before, but I focus on size of company. I don't focus on revenue, and I don't focus on industry, and I don't focus on whether or not they're hiring or not. For me, it's strictly size of company. And the philosophy is real simple is if Ben and I have a company and we start, greenmousepad.com, and that's our company, and we have 79 employees, like if I'm a recruiter trying to break in to recruit for our company, I don't need to go to the careers page. I don't need to do that. What I need to do is I need to just think fundamentally that because a lot of recruiters are going to go to the careers page, they're going to see that we don't have any jobs posted. That means most people are not hiring. But it's like, that's not remotely true at all. No way you and I woke up one day and said, hey, let's build a company and get to 79 people and stop hiring. So I'm fundamentally assuming that you're going to hire a good person if they come along because at the stage you're at, your goal is to grow. Like that's what I'm fundamentally assuming. I'm also coming from the stage of there's probably not a lot of red tape. I'm not dealing with a lot of HR and TA, and there's nothing wrong with HR and TA. It's just that when there's less of it, I have a higher value add to a client. It's not that I try to go around them when they're there. I have no problem working with them. It's just that it's a harder sell when there's a team that's already doing that internally with what you're trying to do. So I'd rather just avoid that sell altogether. But the game that I played really, really well was break into a company when they had 40, 50, 60, 70 people. They're doing, 10, 20, 30, $40 million in business, whatever it is, not ridiculous numbers, but break into there when they're at that stage, right? And try to figure out a way to break in however I would do it through my business development approach, which more often than not was just pitching a specific, doing what we call an NPC pitch. But what I was doing that was a little bit different was I was comparing it to somebody that already worked there. So like, you hired Bob, well, check out Steve or whatever, something like that, right? And sort of doing like what we call a clone pitch. And I'm doing that to break in, and I've got my sequence, which is a 4 email sequence over a 1 week period. And I'm doing my sequences. I'm doing the stuff that I do. I know how to follow up. I know how to play the game. I'm really, really good at creative writing. Like I've always been good. Anybody that coaches with me knows that creative writing is probably outside of creating demand out of thin air. That's like a superpower, I would say, is my creative writing skills. But anyways, you take that creative writing and I would be able to get responses back. And then I could really turn those and I could convert really, really well on getting those responses, good, bad, or indifferent, onto calls, taking those calls and then maximizing profits, maximizing revenues, whatever. Like that's what I was really, really good at. And so anyways, but the game I would play is I would do, 4, 5, 6 placements with a company, right? And that's, call it an average fee of 35 grand, 6 placements. You're talking, what is that? $210,000. So you've got $210,000 going out. That invoice hits that director of finance or that head of finance or whoever gets that accounting or whatever at their company. That they get that. And they're like in the first, 3, 4, 5 months, 6 months, whatever it is. And they see $210,000, they see the line item to Mike Anderson or my company or whatever it is, and they're like, dude, who is this guy? This guy's pretty expensive, whatever. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And so then they go back to the VP of engineering, go back to whoever they go to, and they say, hey, we got to shut this down. We got to hire an internal recruiter. We can't spend this or whatever. So they come back to me and they're like, Mike, we really appreciate the help, but we can't do it. Like, we got to hire somebody internal, whatever. And at that point, what I was always saying, and even if they didn't say that they needed to hire somebody internally, I would suggest to them, hey, let me find you an internal recruiter. I know a lot of good ones out there. I know people that do it well. I'll put them to work for you, and I won't charge you a fee for it. And so what I would do is anybody I probably faced, 12, 13 internal recruiters in my career now, and just placing them, and I want them to go in there and genuinely do well. But they were, invariably, if there's a high growth mode, one recruiter, two recruiters ain't going to do it. They're going to come back, and when they need to come back, obviously first call. And if it's an external recruiter, a lot of times it was somebody that even used to work for me that I would put at a company, i.e., because they were filling the roles already for themselves. So now I'm like, hey, I'm going to get you a job. If you want to go work there, if you want to go internal, it's up to you. We can do that. We can talk about it. Now when it's time to turn on the water faucet again for agency hiring, what's up, Mike? Like, first call. So I sort of played that game, and I played it pretty well. And, and then that's how you kind of take off to the 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, and then crack, $1 million if you get to that level. So, okay.
So real quick, which is phenomenal. I love the breakdown. I love how you also had your MPC campaign that you said is, 4 messages over 1 week based on a clone. Now, did you actually have a candidate clone, or were you just grabbing a resume?
No, that's part of my transformation when I got sober, was telling the truth. Like, what I said I had. Like, there was not a bluff. I really had somebody that was like that. Now, is it subjective on what's a clone? I don't know. I think I look like Benjamin Mena. I'm Benjamin's clone. There you go. Right? So, I don't know. Again, so a clone's a clone. Now, here's the deal. Right? Anybody on the other side of that's going to read that and be like, okay, let's see, whatever. And so, even if they came back to me and they're like, this is not even close, or whatever, a clone, whatever they would say, I was good enough to turn that, hey, kick rocks, kid, to whoa, just breathe. What about this one? Or whatever I had to do to turn it around or whatever. I wasn't, I'm not out to lie to people or anything like that, but my goal was to get responses and to get bites, nibbles on the hook, and then be able to convert those. And so I did it as best I could. And honestly, the candidates that I used were really, really good. I wasn't bluffing with whatever. So even if it wasn't a perfect clone, it was still a good candidate. So they might be like, well, he doesn't look exactly like Steve, but he does look like Leslie. So let's talk or whatever. You know what I mean?
Awesome. You also said something a minute ago about creating demand out of thin air. What does that exactly mean? How do in recruiting?
It means that somebody has not been marketed to, they don't know who I am, they don't know anything about what I would offer or anything, and I can pinpoint in their head what I think that it is they need, and I can create a pitch that I think will get them to bite based on who they are as a person. And that demand out of thin air is very it's not, whoa, hold the phone, I hope you're sitting down, check out this candidate. It's not like that. It's very relatable. It's very personable. And what I'm doing is the demand is literally created after the first email. So the first email, I send it. That's the bait. That's what I put out there. They get back to me. They say either, send a resume, kick rocks. We're not hiring. Leave us alone. Check back in Q2. Go to hell. Whatever they're going to say. Once I have that response from there, I can create a real amount of demand. That's where my real thing is. So it's sort of bait to demand is a better way to say it.
Now, it sounds like you're able to just think fast. Is this something you were trained on? Is this something that you learned? Is this something that other recruiters can learn how to duplicate?
It goes back to elementary school. I always got out of getting in trouble. Except for when I got arrested, but I'm back in school, and I always got out of I could talk my way out of anything. I could weasel my way out of whatever. I could always not study for a test and pass. I could always get I just sort of just flew by the seat of my pants. And I sort of taken that mentality into recruiting. And so what I do is I'm just, very creative in my writing. My main focus every time I write something is what's 95% of the world going to say in this email, and what am I going to say? We have the same exact goal, me and every other recruiter. This is how 95% of them are going to say it, and this is how I'm going to say it. Those 95% are only going to get responses when the demand is great. I might get the response when the demand might not be great, but I'll still get the response to build a relationship. You see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying. How does a recruiter learn how to copywrite better like this? Because I've seen these emails. I'm almost 2 decades in this space where I'm that's the same freaking format and same email you've been copying since literally 1980.
Yeah. 1980 called. They want their AOL dial-up back. Yeah, no, I get it. I've seen it. Trust me. As a coach, I'll start with, hey, what are we working with here? And it's just okay, sit down, buckle up, let's talk. No, I get it. Here's what I'm trying to tell you. It's the creative piece. How do you get better at it? first of all, you start trying stuff that's uncomfortable and you send it and you stop worrying about the result. Like you start doing stuff that happens and you stop worrying about how the other person's on the other end is going to think of it. We're in this world where like everything we put out there is we're worried about like how it's going to be received, what's going to happen, are we going to get canceled or whatever. And the reality of it is that if you get canceled, it's because that person was never looking to buy anyway, or they don't like you. That doesn't even matter. You got to work with people you want to like. This is like number one for me. Be yourself, because if they work with you, they like you. People work with who they like. And like I've always said, if I woke up today and I called every one of my clients and said, hey, I'm no longer recruiting, I'm selling car insurance, they'd be like, okay, well, we'll buy car insurance from you, like whatever, because they like who I am. Now, there's a lot of people out there who don't like me, but I would rather take my 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 clients that really, really like me, work with them, you know, bill my 6, 7, 800, 900,000 $1 million, whatever it's going to be, call it a day and be fine. And it starts with like everybody I've ever built a relationship with, right? I always will ask them. You can ask any of them. You can be like, hey, how did it work with Mike? Well, he sent us this friggin' ridiculous email that was like so left field, didn't make any sense, like whatever. Like I just investigated, and then it sort of just washes away from them because they don't remember exactly what it was. And then insert actual Mike and the relationship starts to build. What I'm really good at, Ben, is getting down. There's like a recruiter guard between everybody, between a client recruiter, candidate recruiter, whatever. There's like this guard up, and you're sort of playing this game of like over the fence, over the wall. I'm good at bringing that thing all the way down and just free flowing of information really quick back and forth, wide open, like whatever. And there's literally nothing I won't try. I'll send voice notes to candidates on LinkedIn. I'll call a candidate. I'll send them Starbucks gift card. There's nothing that I won't do or don't do, because here's my rule. As long as it's not illegal, as long as it's not immoral, give it a shot. Like, what do you care? Like, what do you care? And so the creative piece, if that's my mindset of just getting them to like me, for me to be myself, like, that's cool. And I'll tell you this right now. If I was to write an email, like some of the ones we're talking about, like the 1985 and the, you know, hope you're having a great Tuesday. We specialize in IT staffing. Do you want to see resumes? Like, just, first of all, I would retire if I started doing that. If I start doing that, if you ever get an email that has my signature on that, send it back to me. I'll quit. Like, no. Like, that's never going to happen. Think about this. If you're going to do that, like, if that's your in, okay? Like, first of all, how do you expect to build a relationship? Number two, how are you ever going to separate? Why would they get back to you versus the 712? It's just, they're just going to get back to the next one in their inbox, right? Like, we wonder why staffing gets such a bad name. If a company is teaching a certain, this is how we do business development, this is what we say, this is what we want our pitches to be, and they teach 150 people to do that, and then whichever one's got lucky, in other words, got 5 or 6 responses at the right time because they hit, those are your President's Club winners, those are your killers, the other 142 wash out, and then you hire another 142 to see if you can get some more President's Club winners, and the name just goes down and down and down and down and down. One of the problems with agency recruiting is the barrier to entry is like, do you have a pulse? Like, I mean, for real, like, you know what I mean? So it's like, dude, you got to stand out. Like, anyway, I go on and on about that. And I'm probably not giving exactly specific details because I don't want to share what my creative writing is all about because that's part of my course. But like, trust me, it's pretty good.
So looking at all this time that you've been a big biller, what does your day actually look like?
I'll give you an example. So like I'll do yesterday, since today I'm on the podcast with you. So yesterday I wake up at, let's see, my alarm went off at 4:30. I woke up, I read my Bible. I legit read my Bible. I'm not just saying that. I legit do that. Then I listened to some Cascade holiday Christmas music to fire me up. Got in the shower, got out of the shower, had a 5:30 a.m. coaching session with a guy on the East Coast. Did that for an hour and a half. Was done at 7 a.m. Left that, chugged a Red Bull, went to the gym, 2.5 hours at the gym, home by 9:30, shower up. Actually, yesterday was recruiting because right now I'm upside down with recs. I have too many recs. So yesterday was recruiting. So I recruited for like 2 hours. And then I spent a half an hour to eat lunch. At noon, I had 2 more coaching sessions, noon and 1. Then 2 o'clock, I was back in and I had 3 or 4 candidate calls, 2 client calls, a new job order call. I finally wrapped up my day around 7 o'clock. And then, you know, I'm a true crime junkie. So I finished the true crime and then that was my day. And I ate a couple bags of Skinny Pop because that's my new addiction, and drank some Diet Pepsi, and that's where I'm at. So
Skinny Pop.
Skinny Pop. Yeah, that's wild.
So while you're coaching right now and like, you know, coaching recruiters and how to be better, you're also getting new clients. You're also filling jobs and all that stuff at the moment also too, right?
Correct. So I have 3 revenue streams, 3 income revenue streams right now. I have my own company, which is, you know, recruiting billing, which is like 65% of my income. And then I have my coaching business called another 25%. And then I just launched this course, which has actually been for 3 weeks out, and we've sold a bunch of them. I didn't know it was going to go that hot, and it did, and it's been great. So my 2025 goal is I would like to net 7 figures and have all 3 revenue streams be 6-figure revenue streams. Obviously, coaching would be in, and my hope is to get the course to do that too.
Phenomenal. Well, before we jump over to the quick fire questions, is there anything else that you want to share about like your personal story, the struggles, business development, client attraction?
I don't know when this is going to go live, but we've been in this market where 2021, 2022 were incredible years. A lot of people made a lot of money. It was awesome. Like, coming out of the pandemic, whatever, right? And so a lot of people made a lot of money. And back into 2022, 2023, 2024, obviously has been a down market and we're starting to see an uptick. It's starting to come back a little bit, right? But I would say this, like, no recruiter is ever good enough to beat a bad market. The only thing that beats bad markets is relationships. And like, I am so big on there's never a bad time to build a good relationship. Like, there just is. It's worth talking to somebody. And I know we have this mindset of like, make money every call, like all that kind of stuff. I have no doubt in my mind that a great recruiter can understand that you might not be making money with a person, but like a good recruiter understands who you're going to make money with. A great recruiter understands you will make money with everybody, just a matter of when. I learned a long time ago that no work ever goes unpaid. You just don't know when you're going to get paid for it. And so like that, and I fundamentally understand that. So like, I would say this, there's going to be another downturn at some point. Like, it's going to be an uptick and we should ride it and ride that wave, ride that wave, ride that wave. But don't ever neglect the idea of building a relationship, because when you get to a place where I've been at it for 11, 12 years now, like, I honestly believe that I probably have another maybe 2 years of business development that I need to do, where after that, it's just past relationships coming back when they come back at the time they come back. And there's enough there that I'll be able to feed. And I always say that, like, I'm not here to fill a job. I'm here to fill a department. The only way you can fill a department is through a relationship. There's old adage, right? Give a man a fish, feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, feed him for life. You can say that. Do a deal, eat today. Build a relationship, eat for life. Like, that's the big thing. I know it sounds so cliche, but with the AI stuff and the automations and the whatever, people are starving for communication, real conversation. Whether or not they say it or not, they just are. And if you're going to automate your way into everything, you're going to miss the mark. And you might be able to automate your way to some deals. I'm not saying it doesn't work. What I'm saying is the long-term play. If you want to make this thing a career and you don't want to stress about it and always be chasing your tail for new business development and new clients and new candidates and all that stuff, build relationships. I've never heard anybody say, man, I really regret that relationship that I built a year ago. Like, I never heard anybody say that. So that's what I would say. And it's really easy to do when you start to become a human being rather than just a recruiter. Let people get to know you. I promise you, they like working with people they get to know.
Awesome. Well, jumping over to the quick fire questions, Mike, the next two are probably going to be like great questions for you, but let's just say like you have a brand new recruiter or that's reaching out to you, like just getting started in the space, you like low barrier to entry. They're like, hey, this is a career that I want to do. What advice would you give to them to win?
It'd be 3 things. No matter what happened the day before, show up the next day. Don't ever take anything personally. When you want to quit, don't. And when you're crushing it, keep going. Like, those are the things that we talk about. Show up every day. And honestly, to show up every day and don't take things personally, that's 95% of your battle. Every recruiter that I've seen, they psych themselves out of this business because they can't beat their own head. I still do this today. And this is sort of a tangent. When I get a response back from somebody and they're like, you could tell they're having a bad day. F off. You guys cause cancer. You guys are the scum of the earth. We hate recruiters. Go to hell. I've gotten it all. I've had some like crazy ones. I'll literally get those back. Obviously I'm not going to do anything with them, but I save them into a folder. I'll go back 6 months, a year and a half later, and I'll just read them. And just for a good laugh, for a giggle, just to be like, and I'm still standing. It's okay. The sun still came out today. It's all good. You're going to be okay. That's the thing. And so I think a lot of junior recruiters will fall in love with clients too quickly. They'll fall in love with candidates too quickly, and they'll take everything personally. It's like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Show up every day and do the work. Those would be the things that I would say. And you can teach anybody to recruit. What you can't teach somebody is how to be mentally stable.
Love that. Same question though, from somebody that's been in the game, we'll say 5, 10, 25 years. What advice would you give to them to keep on seeing success or, cross that next barrier?
I would have said something different a year and a half ago before I launched my coaching business. I would have said something generic like, don't ever stop doing business development, or you want to see if you have good relationships, call your clients and see if they answer. Like, just something nimbo, just some basic thing, right? But now what I would say, honestly, that I've been doing this coaching thing and what I've seen, and I've done this myself too, I'll almost call somebody that has been in the game, I would say, it doesn't even matter, I'd say at least 5 years, right? I've been in it for 11 now, 12, going on 12. I'll call somebody with at least 5 years of experience. I'll say, hey dude, let me give you a state of my desk right now. And I'm just going to tell you where I'm at. Poke holes in whatever doesn't make sense to you. And I'll just start talking about, I've got this client, I've got this, I got this, I got this, I got this going on, this, what am I missing? And they don't know anything about what I'm talking about other than they just know recruiting, which is what I want. And I want them to poke holes in it. I think oftentimes we get scared to ask for help because we think we see it all. And I'm telling you, every recruiter has a blind spot. I've got one. I need it. My business partner will call me out on it when I don't see what I'm doing. You need to figure out your blind spot. And the thing about the blind spot is that you figure it out, there's another blind spot. Like, you're never not going to get through your blind spots. And like, so what I've seen is, because I've coached people that 10, 12, 15 years. I just did a guy with 18 years of experience. He's billing $650,000 a year. And we've been working together for over a year and a half now. And now he's going to do 800,000 or 900,000. And I've got another guy that I would love to talk about on this if we can go a little bit longer. But like, those examples are, dude, you don't know your holes in your game until somebody else can poke holes in them. It's like, don't be your own therapist.
And that, which is perfect. But also, you mentioned the other guy. Talk about him.
So, and I got his approval to talk about him. It's kind of a cool story. So I had a guy, you guys can look him up. His name's Randy Stats. He's okay with me sharing his name. He's an awesome dude. Randy came to me in August. I want to say August, maybe September of last year of 2023. We worked together for like four or 5 months, right? And the first 4 months of us working together was literally me seeing his business. He'd been in for 8 years. And the amount of things that he didn't know, and again, I'm not knocking it. I've talked about me sharing this, but it was like mind-boggling me. He had never been in an agency. He had never been coached. He just figured everything out by the seat of his pants, which is great. Like, kudos to him for having a no-quit mentality. But there was some major stuff that he was missing. How to negotiate fees, how to do like just some stuff that like you got to have in this business that's only going to help you. And so there were some major holes in his game. The other holes was he had no clue how to run his business from a hiring standpoint and stuff like this. So we spent the first 4 months getting rid of people and dealing with, he owed some weird debts to some ridiculous SaaS products that he bought that they sold him on some idea that was never going to happen. Whatever. We had to basically strip his business. Okay. The guy's doing, I don't know. Again, I had approval to talk about it, but he was doing 3 to 350 a year, but he's doing 50, 60 deals. I mean, he's doing 5, 6, 7K placements. I mean, we're talking like Keebler deals, like nothing. Like it's not even enough to pay your, I know. It's like, and he, whatever. So December comes around. I'm like, cool, dude, you gonna take some time off? He's like, no, dude, I'm upside down. I got to make money. I got to work. He posted about it, so I'll talk about it. He had $500 left to his name. So he took money out on a credit card to literally buy my coaching to continue, because he had seen the fruits of what I had brought to him so far, but he was still not getting ahead because we were spending a whole time getting rid of all the bad stuff. And so I was like, dude, I can help you, but you got to pay me. So he ends up signing up with me, and he had $500 to his name. The end of December, he gets a contract signed with a new company based on the approach that I gave him, and he gets a 25% agreement done. They have an abundance of openings, whatever. January, like 3rd or 4th, he got a candidate to start with them. It does a $32,000 deal. He had never snipped a deal over 20K in his career in like the 8 years. He did a $32K deal. He's like, oh my gosh. I'm like, yeah, dude, it's possible. Like, you can do this. Like, this isn't crazy. Like, I'm telling you, you could do that again. You could go do another one. So now fast forward to where we're at today, the business that he was doing, the $350K, there was 2 specific companies he's working with. They're like 7% of his current business. He now has 95% of his business with fees that are at 20% or higher. He's doing an average fee of $28,500. He's going to bill over $750,000 this year. He's absolutely changed his business. He's changed his son's life. He's changed his future. And like, he talks about it all the time with like, his back was against the wall. And the 2 things that he did that I just talked about when you said, what would you tell a new recruiter? Is he didn't quit. He didn't take anything personally. I was tough on him. I was hard. We were at 2 sessions a week. I was grilling him. I was getting into his business. Like, I was doing stuff because I knew he could do it. I knew he had it. And when I look at that perspective, I'm like, here's a guy with 8 years who didn't know he didn't have holes. And so I've seen that multiple times where people are like, I think I run a healthy business, but can you just like audit it for me? And I'll go through it. And I do it too. I need people to do it too. And the thing is, when people work with me, I share about my business too. So like, I'll get ideas from them. I'll bounce an idea off them. It's not just a 2-way street, but it helps and it helps and it helps. But Randy's story is a wild one. It's been awesome. I've gotten to know his wife, and he just asked me to be his son's godfather. So that was a very special day for me. So like, anyways, it's the comeback story of the year. He just didn't know what he didn't know. And he reached out on a leap of faith to get it. And it's been great. So that was a pretty cool story that I told him I was going to share that, and he gave me permission to share that.
Awesome. Kind of turn into the light back on you. Even though with all the struggles that you had, the self-inflicted struggles, like, you still crush it. You're still top of the game, whether at the gym, after the gym, your own business, fast forward. Like, what do you think has been a huge contributor to your own personal success?
I mean, it sounds cliche, but it's going to be my faith. I mean, my faith is number one. I mean, it's just the most important thing to me. My sobriety used to be number one, and my faith was number 2, but now my faith in Christ is number 1. That's absolutely what it is. My days are numbered. I feel like I'm living on borrowed time. That's what I feel like. And whenever it's all said and done, like, I just want to be able to walk up, look my king in the face, and just be like, how'd I do? And he's like, welcome in, my good and faithful servant. That's all I want to hear. And so like, it's just a desire to do things the right way, impact people. Like I'm telling you, Ben, I know this sounds so cliche, but I swear to you, I used to care about commission checks and how big my bank account was and all that stuff. And when I cared about all that stuff, it wasn't that big and I was all snorting on partying all the way. Now that I don't care about it, it's bigger than it's ever been, but it's not even about that. What I care about even more than that is the people that I get to work with and impact. And like, that's the stuff. I kid you not. I've said this 1,000 times. If I can take a new recruiter that wants to do coaching with me and they can get them to do a deal and they can see the light in what we do as an industry, that is more exciting to me than me doing a 50, 60K deal or whatever like that. Like that's fine. But when I can teach somebody how to do it, like that's the stuff that gets me going. So like, I want to have a story that can be passed on. That's what I want. Like I don't have a wife. I don't have kids. So I kind of live through LinkedIn and meeting people and talking to people. It's sort of what it is. And I go for it. And I just like being vulnerable with people because I realize when I do that, they get a chance to be who they really are. And like, I think the world is starved for people being their authentic selves because everything's online and nobody ever knows. So that's sort of where it comes from. So my faith is number one. And then just hoping I get that approval at the end of my days from the king upstairs.
Has there been a book that's had a huge impact on your career?
I mean, the obvious, the Bible. Alcoholics Anonymous would be number 2. But if I was going to say a book, I'd say the Dale Carnegie book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's an older book. My dad gave it to me when I was like 7. I, used it as a coaster for 30 years or 20 years. And then I picked it up one day when I was bored and I started reading it. I was like, dude, this stuff is, and I don't even know it was written. It was written a long time ago, 30, 40, 50 years, whatever it was. But it's like, it's practical. How to win friends and influence people. And like, I've always said, if you have no other ability other than the ability to sell, financially you'll be just fine.
What's your advice on recruiters on increasing that ability to say, like, where should they go? Where should they learn? Like, what should they do?
I'll say this. I think a lot of people don't know how to have a real conversation with them in the mirror. They wake up and they do the same thing they've done every day and they make their paycheck. And that's fine. That's what you want. That's what you want. But if you want to go to another level, you got to do some stuff that you've never done before. So the next time you don't want to do something, do it. Next time you don't want to call a client and call them out for not holding up their end of the bargain, do it. Like there are things that you have to do that are going to make you uncomfortable. But I always say that like, if you operate in safety zone and the client's over here, you honestly have this much wiggle room to push. If I push and I get here and you stay here in safety zone, I'm working with all this extra relationship and all this extra leeway that you're not getting because you didn't even push. And that is like, to me, are they throwing away the buffalo wing when there's still chicken on it, right? Like there's still meat on the bone. Like, what are we talking about? Like you got to push. And I'm not saying you push just to push, but I'm saying there's like this thing, right? Something happens to you. You're at an agency. Something happens to you. Client pisses you off. Candidate pisses you off. Something happens. Something goes sideways. It always gets the nature of the business. We deal with people. So you're like, I'm so mad. This shouldn't have happened because of blah. Okay. So you tell that to your next door neighbor and you guys go to lunch and you vent about it at Chipotle. Okay. That's what 98% of the world's going to do. What you should do is what you're feeling. Tell the client, tell the candidate, tell the whatever. Now do it professionally, do it respectfully, but tell them exactly what's happening. If you do that 10 out of 10 times, 3 times they're going to tell you to F off, 3 times they're not going to want to work with you, but 4 times they're going to get what you want. And the 4 times going to be farther down the road than you ever were possible. And you'll get better at it, and you'll tweak your skills, and you'll start doing stuff that you'll start to realize that you don't have to operate in this cookie cutter box shell that's like whatever. You might live in a world where you're getting 5-star Yelp reviews, but you're not paying your bills. What are we talking about? What are we talking about? People not complaining about you doesn't pay your mortgage. Commission checks do. Like, you know what I'm saying? And so like you've got to ask for what it is you want. I mean, one of the biggest thing that blows my mind, this is from like 3 years ago. I'd read this in a couple of places, so I don't know if it's still accurate, the same numbers, but I heard that 95% of self-proclaimed salespeople don't ask for the sale 95% of the time. That's a problem. That's a massive problem. You need to ask for what it is you want. People are scared to ask for what they want. So what they do is they hide behind, let me know if you're interested. That is not a call to action. It never has been. It never will be. That's never been a call to action. A call to action is, do you want to interview Steve? Do you want to work together? Can I send you the resume? Will you make an offer to Barry if he does well tomorrow? That is a call to action. That's a yes or no question. That is a line in the sand. That gets them to go. Sales is not you changing someone's mind. It's never has been. I'm not good enough to change someone's mind. You're not good enough to change someone's mind. Susie's not. Nobody. We're not going to do that. What we are good enough to do is to get to the answer now. You're not good enough to change your mind. All sales is getting someone to go where they're already going to go just faster. I always say good recruiters get the answer eventually. Great recruiters get the answer now.
Love that.
It's true. I'm telling you. And so the biggest difference between the 250K biller and the 750K biller isn't that it's not effort. It's not nothing. It's getting to the no quicker, getting to the yes quicker. It's the time saved. They can do more with a lot less because they save their time in so many other areas.
We're going to take this question back over to you. And let's kind of just look back at, everything that you've gone through, the ups and downs, the coke, the drugs, the partying, the commission strikes, $1 million years. If you get to sit down with yourself and have a cup of coffee or a Red Bull at the very beginning of your recruiting career, what advice would you give yourself?
I'd say these two things. Whatever is going to happen in whatever situation you're in, it's never going to be as good as you think it's going to be, and it's never going to be as bad as you think it's going to be. It's going to be somewhere in the middle. So just roll with the punches and don't think the highs are higher than they are and the lows are lower than they are, because they're never every day. Nothing's life and death in this business. You can always get another client, another candidate, another interview, another commission check. There's always more out there. Hiring will forever be a thing until the end of time. So we're not worried about that. So don't ride the wave, so to speak, as much as I have. It's never as bad as it's going to be. It's never as good as it's never as good as you think it's going to be, never as bad as you think it's going to be. It's usually somewhere in the middle.
Since I started following you and connected with you on LinkedIn, I've actually seen the comments. I've seen the stuff. I'm sure recruiters reach out to you constantly and ask you questions like, hey, how'd you do this and that? How do you do business development? What's the question that you wish they would actually ask you? And what's the answer?
Oh, man. The question that I wish they would ask me is, can you teach me the art of relationship building? Can you teach me the art of transparency? Can you teach me the art of having an open dialogue with somebody that might not benefit me? Can you teach me that art? Most people that reach out to me are because their back's against the wall on a draw. They're up against it. They got a bill due. They got something. They got to make money. They got to transact now. They got whatever, which I get that. I understand that. But usually if you're reaching out at that point, you're reaching out too late. I'm not a magician, but I can poke holes in your story and get you better. If people want to build a career, that's what I want. The best way to say it. Is there a way you can teach me how to make recruiting go from being a job to being a career? You ask me that, I got you.
This has been a phenomenal conversation. For anybody that wants to follow you, how do they go about doing that?
LinkedIn is the main area to follow me on. Mike Anderson, I'm a co-founder of Jay Taylor. I own the Recruiter Bill Print. That's a play on words for Recruiter Blueprint. But you can check that out. Yeah, if you want to follow me, I try to provide content that's useful, sometimes funny, sometimes whatever. Put it out there. My target audience is other agency recruiters. That's what I'm really after. I don't do it for business development purposes other than building my coaching and my Recruiter Bill Print business. So you should get useful stuff there. I will say this. A lot of stuff I put out there, people will then follow up with me on DMs and say, hey, can you elaborate on this? The answer is I can, but I got to charge you for it. And that's what the coaching is for. And that's what the Recruiter Bill Print's for. So check out Recruiter Bill Print. I promise you this. If you watch this and you like what I was talking about, the Recruiter Bill Print, it's specifics, it's detailed. If there's any questions you have based after this, I'm about 99.9% sure I answered it in the Recruiter Bill Print, 100%. So check right out. It's worth it. Follow me on LinkedIn, and I also do one-on-one coaching. I've also got 4 approved coaches that have worked with me now for over a year that I've seen how they operate. Their business is taken off, and they actually will coach as well underneath me, and they're a cheaper rate than I am. So if you have any interest in them, I can introduce you to them as well. That's the areas where you could follow me. So myself, Mike Anderson, Randy Statz, Michael Austria, Chris McIntyre, and Camille DeBrun are the 5 of us. But check out the Recruiter Bill Print, and hopefully you'll like it.
Awesome. And before I let you go, is there anything else that you want to share with the listeners?
I'll say this. I sort of already said it, but this is my big plug. There's never a bad time to build a relationship. So build a relationship. If you got off a 45-minute call and you felt like you got nothing out of it, I promise you got something out of it. You just don't know what it is yet. So information is gold. Whoever has the gold makes the rules. Just conversating with people is going to win. If you spend more time on the phone than you do over email, you're probably going to build more next year than you did this year. I'll tell you that right now. That's what I'd like to say.
Personally, I'm probably going to check out the course that he just dropped to talk about a gold mine. I'll make sure to have that in the show notes. So if you want to check it out, or feel free to reach out to Mike yourself. Mike, I'm so glad that you came on. And honestly, just the conversation that we had, what I've seen online, probably the best thing that happened was that night in jail. When you mentioned that person, that following week, somebody died from fentanyl. I've seen people die from fentanyl. It could have easily been you, a completely different life story. But it's just amazing the impact that the recruiting career has had on your life.
Yeah. I don't take any of it for granted. I'm grateful. So it's crazy. The goodness is the exact reason why I'll never go back, because my life is way too good. Why would I mess it up?
Well, Mike, thank you so much for coming on. And for the listeners, 2025, put in the work and make it your year of personal abundance. Let's go, guys.